Hello, my name is Mayanka. I am accounts and a finance trainer from Uplatz. Today in this class, we will discuss section 174 to section 176. These sections are the very much important section which are relating to income tax. So now we will start our discussion on section 174 to section 176. Income earned in the financial year assessed in the same financial year. Assessed in the same financial year. Is that normally, as per the provision of Income Tax Act, the income which is earned by the assessee in the financial year, then it will be assessed, it will be taxable in the assessment year. It will be taxable in the assessment year. It will not be assessed, it will not be taxable in the same financial year. For the example, there is a person, Mohan, and and in the financial year 2019-20, he earned total income 5,50,000 rupees. He earned total 5,50,000 rupees. Now such income shall be assessed. Such 5,50,000 shall be assessed in the hands of Mohan in the assessment year 2020 and 2021. Means any of the income which is earned by the assessee in the financial year, then such income will be taxable. Then such income will be taxable in the year, in the in the assessment year. It will be taxable in the assessment year. Assessment year means just next year. Just next year means the year in which the income earned, then such year will be considered as financial year, and the year just proceed just next means just the following the year will be considered as assessment year. So any of the income which is earned by the assessee in the financial year will be taxable, and it will be assessed in the assessment year. For the example, Mr. Ram, he earned following incomes, just like salary income 2,50,000, house property income 1,50,000, and other sources. For the example 75,000. So the total income of the assessee is 4,75,000, and he earned such income in financial year 2018-19. Then such a 4,70,000 will be taxable in assessment year 2019-20. It will be assessable, it will be assessed, it will be taxable in the next year, means it will be taxable in the assessment year 2019-20. So we will discuss some exceptions. Now we will discuss some exception of such a general rule. Exception means when the income of the financial year 2018-19, for the example, it will be assessed in the same financial year, means the income which is earned by the assessee in the any year, it will be taxable in the same financial year. Now there are some exceptions of the general rule. So income earned in the financial year assessed in the same financial year. Now we will discuss the exception of the general rules. Section 174 to section 176. Generally, the income which is earned by the assessee is assessed in the assessment year. The assessment year is always ahead to previous year. Is that the income which is earned by the assessee during the previous year, during the financial year, then it will be chargeable to tax in the year which is next following year. Means such income will be assessed, such income will be taxable in the next assessment year, in the next year. Means in the next following year, means it will be chargeable to tax, or it will be assessed in the assessment year. So in other words, the income which is earned during during one financial year, it is not charged to tax in the same financial year, but it will be chargeable to tax in the next following year. The next following year will be considered as assessment year. The next following year will be known as assessment year. So this is the general rule. This is the general rule of income tax. But there are some exceptions of this general rule. There are some exceptions of this general rule. According to this, the income of the same assessment means the income of the assessment year, sorry, the income of the financial year will be taxable or it will be assessed in the same financial year. It will not be assessed, it will not be taxable in the assessment year, it will be taxable in the same year. So now we will discuss these circumstances. Number one, person leaving India. Number one, the person leaving India. When the assessing officer, when there is any assessing officer and the assessing officer has any doubt or he has information that the such person is leaving India and he will not return back to India for the some years, means means for the example Mr. Ram, he is leaving India, he is leaving India, and according to the AO, means the AO has the information that now Mr. Ram, he will not return back to India. He will not return back to India. So in this situation, the AO, he will proceed or he will assess the income of such a of the Mr. Ram in the same, means where it appears to the AO that any individual may leaving India during the current financial year or shortly after its expiry, and that there is no present intention of returning to India, means currently there is no any intention, there is no any information whether he will return to India or not. So in this situation, the assessee may proceed to assess his income for the period comprised in the financial year. Means the income of such person will be taxable in the same financial year. In the same financial year, is that the total income which is related to such period will be taxable from the expiry of the previous year, will be taxable in the same year. It will be taxable in the same year. Just like that, Mr. Ram, he is leaving India on 31st July 2019. He is leaving India in financial year 2019-20, and he is leaving the, means this is the departure date is 31st July. On 31st July, he will leave India. Now the assessing officer, he has the intention, means now he think or he has the information that Mr. Ram, he will not return to India, means there is no intention to return India. So in this situation, Mr. AO, he will assess the income of Mr. Ram in the financial year 2019-20. Means the income which is earned by Mr. Ram from 1st April 2019 to 31st July 2019, then such income will be assessed in the same financial year. Such income means up to the date of his departure. The income will be taxable. The income will be assessed in the same financial year. Means it will not be assessed or it will not be taxable in the next year. It will be assessed or it will be taxable in the same financial year. So where it appears to the assessing officer that any individual may leave India. There is an individual and he is leaving India during the current financial year or shortly after its expiry, and that there is no present intention, means the person, he has no any intention to return India. In this situation, the assessing officer, he will assess his total income for the period comprised in the current financial year, means for the period of his till his departure, from the period starting from 1st April till the date of his departure. Is that the total income? Is that the total income of the such assessee for the period? For the period means the period will be start from the expiry of the last year, and if the previous year was has already been determined in this case up to the probable date of his departure, means from means the date when the financial year and previous year end. For means according to the example, the previous year will be end, the previous year end on 31st March 2019, 31st March 2019. So now the income from 1st April 2019 till the date of his departure, till the date of his departure will be assessed in the same financial year. In the same financial year, it will not be assessed in the previous year. Sorry, in the assessment year, it will be assessed, it will be taxable in the same year, in the same year. This is the exception, this is the one exception, this is the first exception of the general rule. The general rule is the income of the previous year, the income of the financial year will be taxable in the assessment year. So this is the first exception. If the person leaving India and there is no intention to return of such person in India, return to India, then the income, then the assessing officer, he will assess the income of such person in the same financial year. In the same financial year. The total income of each completed year or the part thereof, including such period, shall be chargeable to tax. Means if means he is leaving India, he is leaving India within the financial year, means the part of the year he is in India, part of the year he is in India. So the income which is relating to such part year will be taxable in the same financial year. It will be taxable in the financial year. So the total income of each completed previous year or part thereof, including such period, shall be chargeable to tax at the rate in force that assessment year, and the separate assessment year must be made in the respect of each completed previous year or the part thereof. Is that first in the hands of Mr. Ram, the income of previous year means 2018-19 will also be assessed in 2019-20. This full year will be taxable, and income from 1st for 2019 to 31st July 2019 will also be assessed. It will also be assessed in 2019-20. So the whole year income and the part year income both will be taxable in year 2019-20. It will be taxable in the 1920 because the income of 18-19 is taxable, is assessed in the assessment year. So according to this, according to general rule, it will be taxable in the assessment year. The assessment year is 1920, and according to the exception, because Mr. Ram, he is leaving India. He is leaving India, so his income will be taxable in the same financial year. So the same financial year is 1920. So the total for the total year and the part of the year, the income will be assessed and it will be taxable in the same financial year, and the rate which are applicable, or the rate which is in force in that assessment year, and the separate assessment must be made in the respect of each of completed year and part of the year, means for each assessment year, for the means in the respect of such assessment year 1920, means the for the financial year 2018-19, a separate assessment shall be made, and in the respect of such part another assessment shall be made, means for each of the assessment, for each of the income assessment, separate assessment shall be made. So the AO is entitled to estimate the income of the individual who is leaving India from such a date or part thereof in the case where his income cannot be readily determined in the manner which is provided in the Act for computing the income under each head. Is that is that if the income of the assessee is not determinable as per the provision of Income Tax Act. If as per the provision of Income Tax Act, the determination means the income determination is not it is not done, means the AO is not eligible, or he is not determining the income of such assessee up to the date of his departure. Then he will estimate, then he will the AO he will estimate the amount of income of such person which will be taxable or which will be assessable in the hands of such assessee. Is that the assessing officer, he is entitled to estimate, the income of such person, for the period or the part thereof, in case where his income cannot be easily determinable. When the income of such person is not determinable, then in this situation the AO can estimate the income amount of income, and on the basis of which he will calculate the amount of tax which will be required to be payable by such assessee, so for the purpose of making this assessment, means for the purpose of determining the amount of income, the AO, the assessing officer, may serve a notice upon the assessee and requiring him to furnish within such time as may be specified in the notice a written under section 142 subsection 1 clause I, and setting forth his total income for each completed previous year comprised in the period of assessment, and his estimated total income for any part of the period. Means means if there is any assessee, if there is a means for the purpose of the assessment, according to such provision, then the assessing officer he will serve a notice. For the assessment, the assessing officer will serve a notice to the assessee, and he will serve the notice, and he will ask to assessee to furnish all these information, to furnish all these data within the specific time period, means before the date of leaving, or not less than 7 days, means within the 7 days you are required to provide all these information, all these data, means the assessing officer he will properly explain or properly clarify each and everything in the notice, and according to such notice the assessee he is required the assessee is required to furnish all the information, and all the detail which is required by the assessing officer, and such information is required to be furnished by the assessee within the relevant period. The relevant period shall not be less than 7 years. It shall not be less than 7 years. So the AO requiring him to furnish all these information and all these data within the specific period, which is a specific period, and a return, and the assessee he will also furnish a return under section 142 subsection 1 clause 1, sitting for his total income for each of the completed year, for each of the completed period in the period of assessment, and he will also furnish his estimated total amount of income for the part of the year, for the part of the period. If the AO doesn't, sorry, if the assessee if the assessee he does not furnish the information, if he does not furnish the return which is required by the AO in such notice, then the income will be assessed by such person on the basis of best judgment. Means the AO will determine the amount of income on the basis of best judgment, means he will determine the income of such assessee on the basis of estimation basis on his own base, means if the data which is required, the information which is required by the assessing officer is not furnished by the assessee within the relevant time period, then the assessing officer he will determine the income on the basis of judgment, on the basis of best judgment under section 144. Under section 144, non-compliance with the requirement of the notice may also attract the amount of penalty. Means if the assessee he will not comply the notice, then he may be liable for the penalty. He may be liable for the penalty under section 271. Under section 271, he may be required to make the payment of penalty. He is required to make the payment of penalty. The tax chargeable on any individual under this section shall be over and above the tax, if any, chargeable under the other provision of the act. Means the tax which is chargeable under the Income Tax Act, under the provision of this section, it shall be over and above the tax. If any which is chargeable under any other provision of this act. So the assessment under this section may be made even on the income of the period which is beyond the expiry of the assessment, beyond the expiry of assessment year, if the probable date of assessee departure is after the expiry of assessment year. Means the assessment under this section may be made, it may be made even on the income of the period which is beyond the expiry of assessment year, if the probable date of departure of such person is after the assessment year, if after the expiry of assessment year, after the expiry of assessment year, then the income of the period which is beyond the expiry of assessment year will also be assessed, which is also be assessed. So, in addition to issue the notice for making the assessment under this section, the assessing officer may as well issue notice under section 142 subsection 1 clause 1 and under section 148 subsection 1, and requiring him to furnish a written and other relevant information within the specific period, which shall not be less than 7 days, as the case may be. Think of it. Is that in this case, the assessing officer under this section, the assessing officer, he can also require, in addition to the notice, in addition to the issue of notice, the assessee he may also issue a notice under section 142 subsection 1 clause 1, and he may also issue the notice under section 148 subsection 1, and he may requiring or he may require from the assessee that you will furnish all these relevant information and all these relevant data and returns and the returns, and you are requiring, or sorry, you are furnish all this information within the period of 7 days. You are required to furnish all this information within the 7 days. Thus, the AO is empowered to make more assessment than on the person who is leaving India before his departure. Is that if the AO wants, then he can make more assessment, more than one assessment on such person, the person who is leaving India before his departure. Before his departure, the AO, if he wants more than one assessment, then he can make more than one assessment on such person, but before the departure of such person, departure of such person. Number two exception. AOP or the BOI or the artificial judicial person formed for the particular event, which is formed for the particular event and for the particular purpose. Is that if there is any AOP, there is any BOI, or there is any artificial judicial person, and such person, such AOP and BOI is made, it is formed for a particular purpose, and such particular purpose or such particular event is done. So in this situation, the income of such AOP, the income of such BOI, and the income of such artificial judicial person will be assessed in the same financial year. It will be assessed in the same financial year. Section 174, subsection 174A. Section 174A. So, as per section 174A, when there is any AOP, there is any BOI, which is formed for the particular event, for the particular purpose, and the particular purpose and the particular event is completed, and the assessing officer is in the view that the assessing officer is in the view that now such a AOPBOI will be dissolved in the same year. It will be dissolved. So the assessing officer, he will make the assessment of his income, of its income, up to the date of dissolution as income of the relevant assessment year. Is that for the example, there is a AOP, and such AOP is made. It is made for a for the particular event. It is made for the particular event. It is made for the particular event. And in the financial year 2019-2020, such a event is complete. Such event is done. Now the AO is an opinion that, or he is in the opinion that now the firm, the AOP will be dissolved. It will be dissolved in the same year, or in the next year, or in the next year. Means such a AOP, it may be dissolved in the same year, or it may be dissolved in the next year. So in this situation, the AO will assess the income of such AOP in the same financial year. Is that section 174A provides the assessment accredited assessment in the case of certain AOP and certain BOI. If there is any AOP or there is any BOI which is formed or which is established or which is made for a particular event, for a particular task, or for the particular purpose, and the assessing officer, he has any doubt that such AOP or such BOI is likely to be dissolved in the same year, or it may be dissolved in the next assessment in the next year. So in this situation, the AO, he may make the assessment of the income of such AOP, of such BOI, within the date of the dissolution, within the or up to the date of dissolution. Means he will assess the income of such AOP or BOI up to the date of dissolution. Up to the date of dissolution, the income will be assessed by the such a person, such AO, such AO of the means the AO, he will assess the income up to the date of dissolution as the income of such relevant assessment year. The income of such a relevant assessment year, he will assess it. The proceedings in this case shall be on the same basis as contained in section 174, which deal with the accredited assessment of the person who is leaving India. Means all other provision which is related to the proceedings in the case of such AOP, BOI, and in the case of artificial judicial person will be same. It will be same as the provision which are applicable on the person who is leaving India. Is that if there is any AOP, there is any BOI, or there is any artificial judicial person which is formed, or which is maintained, or which is established for the particular event or for the particular purpose, and the AO is in the intention, that means he has the information about that the such a AOP, such BOI will be dissolved within the same year or in the next year. Then the assessing officer, he will make the assessment of the income of such AOP, of such BOI, up to the date of dissolution. And up to the date of dissolution, the income will be assessed by the assessee, and such income will be considered the income of the relevant assessment year. And all the provisions which are relating to the proceeding will remain same as the which are applicable in our previous exception. Means the person who is living in it. Person trying to alienate their assets. person who is trying to alienate their assets. When there is section 175, when there is any person, when there is any person means during the year, if there is any person who wants to sell, who wants to transfer, who want to dispose any of assets to avoid the payment of tax, to avoid the to avoid the tax, to avoid the payment of tax, then in this situation the AO, he has the right or he can assess the income of such person in the same year, in the same year. Is that if it appears to the AO during any current assessment year that such person is likely to charge, sale, transfer and dispose or otherwise part with any of his assets with the view to avoiding the payment of whole or part of his liability under the Income Tax Act, then the total income of such person for the period from the expiry of the previous year for the assessment year to the date when the AO commenced proceeding under this section shall be chargeable to tax in that assessment year itself. Means if the assessing officer he has any doubt that such person is likely to charge, such person is likely to sell or transfer or dispose of any of the property, so that he can avoid the payment of tax, he can avoid the tax liability, avoid the tax liability. In this situation, in this situation the in this situation the AO he has the right, the AO he can make the assessment, the AO make the assessment for the, then in this situation the total income of such person, then the total income of such person for the period, then the total income of such person for the period from the expiry of previous year, from the expiry of the previous year for that assessment year to the date when the AO commences the proceeding under this section, and such income shall be chargeable to tax in that assessment year itself. It shall be taxable in the that assessment year itself. That assessment year itself. Thus, then the proceeding in this case shall be on the same basis as per the provision as the provision which is defined in section 174, means the provision of the proceeding means the proceeding in this case shall be made just like the proceedings which is made as per section 174. As per section 174, the person who is living in, means if there is any person he wants to transfer, he want to sell, he want to dispose of any of the asset within the year only to avoid the tax liability, to avoid the tax liability and the AO he has any doubt, then he will assess the income of such person in the same year, in the same year. Discontinue of business or profession. Discontinuation of the business or profession. Section 176. Section 176, when there is the discontinuation of business, is that if there is any discontinuation of business, means the business is discontinued by the assessee, so in this situation, the income, the amount of profit of or gain of such business, means the profit of gain of the previous year and the profit and gain of the current year up to the date of discontinue, up to the date of discontinue, will be taxable in the such assessment year, means in the current year, just like that. Current year means just like the previous year, the previous year was 2018-19 and the present in the current year is 1920. So the income of a previous year 2018-19 and the income of 1920 up to the date of dissolution, up to the date of discontinue, will be taxable in the year 2019-20. Is that where any business, where any profession, where any business or where any profession is discontinued, it is discontinued in any assessment year, the if there is any person who wants to discontinue his business, he want to discontinue his profession in any of the assessment year, then the assessment may be made in that very year of the income, means the income of such business will be it will be assessed. It will be assessed within the same period, and the income for the period between the date of expiry of previous year till the date of business discontinue, means from the 1st April to the date of discontinue. If there is any income of such business, then it will be assessed in the same year. It will be assessed in the same year, means the income of, just like that, the income of 2018-19 will also be taxable in 1920 as assessment year, and the income of 2019-20 will also be taxable in the year of 2019-20. If the business, for the example, the business is discontinue, for the example, the business is discontinue on 1st October 2019, then the income up to for up the income up to for, sorry, 30 September 2019 will be taxable. It will be taxable in the year 2019-20. It will be taxable in the same year when there is any discontinuation of business. There is any discontinue of the business. So where any business or the profession is discontinued in any assessment year, then such assessment may be made in that year, in a very year of the income from the business for the year between the expiry of the previous year, relevant to that assessment year, and the date of discontinue. In addition to the assessment year, if any, which is made for the income which is related to the earlier previous year, means 1890. The income of 2018-19 will also be taxable. It will also be assessed in 2019-20. Thus, the assessing officer has an option to make a permanent. Sorry, in this situation, the assessing officer, he has an option that he can make a premature assessment of the profit which is earned by the assessee up to the date of dissolution, or sorry, up to the date of discontinuation. In the year of discontinuation, instead of usable financial year, means the AO, he has an option that he can make the assessment of such a business, and up to the date of such discontinuation, not for the whole year, he can make the a premature assessment. So discontinuation and the dissolution of the business or the profession by the association or by the firm does not fall within the provision of section 176, as they are deal with under section 177 and 189 respectively. The discontinuation and the dissolution of business or profession by the association or by the firm, it does not fall within the provision of section 176, means under section 176 there is the continuation of business, there is the continuation or discontinue of the business. Then that if there is any dissolution of business or profession by the association or by any firm, then the provision of section 176 will not be applicable on it. The dissolution and the discontinue of the firm is covered by section 177, and the discontinuation and the dissolution of the firm is defined in section 189. Meaning of discontinuation of business. What is the meaning of discontinuation of business? So the discontinuation used in this context refer to the complete cessation of business, means where the business is completely stopped, where the business is totally closed, then it will be known as discontinued. When there is the complete cessation of business, instead of mere change of ownership or change in the constitution of firm, is that if there is any change, then it will not be, if there is any change in the ownership of the business, or there is any change in the constitution of business, then it will not be considered as discontinuation. Discontinuation means totally cessation, totally lock, totally close the business, totally close the business. A change in the ownership may be considered as succession. If there is any change in the ownership, then it will be considered as succession. It will be considered as succession. But when there is any stoppage of the business, there is a succession of the business, then it will be considered as there is a cessation of the business, then it will be considered as discontinue. Then discontinue will be there. A change of the ownership may involve succession, and for the purpose of this section, a business must be regarded as being continued. It means if there is any succession, then it will be considered that the business is a continue. There is a no means there is a no close in this business. The business is continue, but in the case of discontinue, but in the case of discontinuation, there is a no continuation in the business. Since the succession and the discontinuation are two manually exclusive concepts, there cannot be discontinue in the case where there is a succession. When there is a succession, there will not be any discontinue, because in the case of succession, the business of one person is carried on by the another person. So there will not be any discontinue. If a part of the business of the assessee is dropped owning of its non-profitability nature, either permanently or temporary, then it would not imply that the business has been discontinued. Is that if there is any business, it has a different portion, it has a different segment, and if there is any segment, if there is any segment which is dropped due to the non profitability, means now in this in a particular segment there is no more activities, or there is no activities due to the non profitability, then it will not be considered that it will not be considered that the business has been discontinued. It will not be considered that the business has been discontinued. Business has been discontinued means when there is a complete cessation, when there is a complete break, complete lock, then it will be considered as discontinuation. So, in other words, inactivity in trade does not lead to the conclusion that the trade has been discontinued. Is that if the business is not continue, means if there is any inactivity of the business, means the business is not carried properly, is that there is no mean that the business is discontinued. Discontinue means when the business activity are properly and properly closed, properly logged, then it will be considered as discontinued. It will be considered as discontinued. It will be known, or it will be considered as discontinuation. There may be cases where the trade may be carried on even after the dissolution of the firm. Means there may be some cases when the business activity of the such business will be continue even after there is a dissolution, even after the dissolution of such firm, or even after the liquidation of company. Means there may be any cases, or there may be some situation when the activities of the business is carried on even after the dissolution, even after the dissolution. The amalgamation of two separate and independent business belonging to the two distinct owner may result in the discontinuation of those business and the change of ownership. In the case of amalgamation, the amalgamation is made between the two entities. The amalgamation is made between the two entities. One entity is amalgamating and one is amalgamated. So, in the case of amalgamation, when the amalgamation taken place, so the one company, in the case of amalgamation, these two company merge and a single company create. So in this situation, the company which will amalgamate on the another company, then the business of the one company will be, and it will be discontinued, or it will be dissolved. So where there is an amalgamation, and there is the amalgamation of two and the more companies, then the business of the one company will be discontinued. Where the business of a joint family or a firm is split up on the partition of the family, or there is a dissolution of firm and the business which is divided into branches or the portions among the members, it would be the case of discontinue of old business, even if some or all the members carry on their business in the same premises and take advantage of the old business connection. Is that, for the example, there is the dissolution of partnership firm, there is the dissolution of partnership firm, and there is a business, and such business is divided into the different branches. It is divided into a different branches, but the main business is and but the main business is and when there is the partition between the family, between the joint family business. So in this situation, the old joint family business will be closed, and now the person and the members of such family, they will start their own business, start their own activities. So in this situation, if they are using same building, or they are taking the advantage of the old business, but in this situation, it will be considered that the old business is discontinued. The old business is discontinued. For the example, there is a partnership firm. For the example, there is a partnership firm. There is a partnership firm, and partnership firm, and in such partnership firm, there are three members. There are three members: member A, B, and C. A, B, and C. And now the firm is dissolved. There is the dissolution of such firm. The firm is dissolved. Now in this situation, it will be considered as discontinuation of business. It will be considered as discontinue of business. Now a new firm is created. New firm is created, and so new firm is created, and this new firm, there is two members, just like A and B. A and B. Now they are doing the business in the same entity. They are doing the business in the same office, and they are using the things of the old firm, of the old firm. So in this situation, it will be considered that the old firm's business is properly discontinued. It is closed. It is closed. Whether the new partnership firm is using the old things of such a old partnership, or whether they are doing the business in the same business premises, but it will be considered that the old firm is properly discontinued. The old firm is properly discontinued. So it will be considered that there is the discontinuation of business. There is the discontinuation of the old business. This is because of the fact that in the case of assessee is that the family or the firm has ceased to be carry the business, and there is no succession in so far as the integrity of the business is not preserved as had in sight Nagji, Purushottam and company. Means on the basis of such a case law, it will be considered that the old business will be discontinued. The old business will be discontinued. Now, we will discuss the meaning of discontinuation of profession. We have discussed discontinue of business. This is the meaning of discontinuation of business. When the business is properly seized, when the business is properly closed. Now, what is the meaning of discontinuation of profession? Discontinuation of profession. Discontinuation of profession is that when the profession of any firm, whether the profession of any person is discontinued. Means in the case of profession, a firm may discontinue its operation, though its partner may remain in the profession. Means the partners are there, they are in the profession, but the firm discontinue its profession, discontinue the profession. Where a professional man join a firm, he does not cease to carry on his profession, and only when he retire from the firm and he cease to practice once and for all, he would be said to have discontinued his profession, even though the firm in which he was a partner may continue to function after his retirement, with or without new partner. Is that, for the example, there is a partnership firm, partnership firm, and in such partnership firm, there are four members four members sorry, A, B, C, and D. There are four members A, B, and C, and D. A, he is a chartered accountant. B is a advocate, and he is any service provider, means they are also service provider, just like they are also CA. They are also CA. Now, Mr. A retired. Now, Mr. A retired from the firm. Now he will not continue the profession. Now he will not want to continue the profession. So in this situation, it will be considered that Mr. A discontinue his profession. Mr. A, he has discontinued his profession. The businesses carry on, means the firm is continue. The partnership firm is continue. But Mr. A, who is the CA, he discontinue his profession. He discontinue his profession. In the case of discontinue of the profession, there will not be discontinue of the business. The business will be continue. It will be continued by the new members. It will be continued by the new partners or by the old partners. But in the case of normally in the case of discontinue of profession, the discontinue of business will not be there. The discontinuation of the business will not be there. So, in the case of profession of the firm may discontinue its profession, though its partner may remain in the profession and vice versa. Where the professional man join a firm, he does not cease to carry his profession, and only when he retires from the firm and cease to practice once the for all, he would be said to have discontinued his profession, even though the firm in which he was a partner might continue to function after his retirement, with or without a partner. In order to constitute proper discontinuation of the profession for the purpose of this section, it is not essential that there should be a complete cessation. There should be a complete cessation of the profession practice for the rest of the man's life. For the purpose of this, a advocate would be said to have discontinued his professional practice when he take up a full-time assignment for as a judge or as a legal advisor, but after retirement or resignation from the service, he is entitled to return to his professional practice again. Means it is not mandatory that he will properly discontinue his own business, his own profession. If for the example, there is an advocate and he is a discontinue his profession, his a professional practice, but now he is doing the service, who he is doing the activities, he is doing the who is doing the work as a full-time assignment as a judge or as a legal advisor. But after retirement or after the resignation from the service, he is entitled to return to his professional practice again. He is entitled separate assessment for the each year. For each of the year, the separate assessment shall be made. For the each of the year, the separate assessment will be made. Is there the total income which is earned by the assessee in the relevant previous year and the income which is earned by the assessee in part of the year? Then, in the respect of these income, the separate assessment shall be made for the both of the year, for both of the income. Means if there is any assessee, he has earned the income for the previous year 2019-20 and for the part year 2020 and 21. Means he is leaving the India, just like in this situation. For both of the years, separate assessment shall be made. For the both of the years, separate assessment shall be made. So the total income of each completed previous year or the part thereof included in the period for which assessment should be made, and the assessment shall be made separately. The assessment for each year shall be made separately and shall be chargeable to tax at the rate or the rates which are applicable. Means with the rates means such income will be taxable at the rate which will be applicable for the relevant assessment year. For the relevant assessment year, the rate will be applicable on such assessment or will be applicable on such income. So for each of the year, for the part of the year, for the part of the period, the assessment shall be made. The assessment shall be made separately. Assessment shall be made separately. Notice to AO. Notice to assessing officer. A person, when he is discontinue his business, when there is any person who is when there is any person and he is discontinue his business or any profession, then he must give a notice to the assessing officer of the fact of discontinuation within the period of 15 days from the date of discontinuation. Is that if there is any person he wants to discontinue his business, then he will send a notice to the assessing officer about such discontinuation, and such a notice is required to be sent. Such a notice is required to be made by such a person within the period of 15 days. Within the period of 15 days, he will send the notice to the AO about such discontinuation. If the assessee fails to provide such a notice within the period of 15 days, if he failed to provide the notice within the period of 15 days, then he shall be liable to make the payment of penalty. Means the assessee will be liable to make the payment of penalty under section 272. Under section 272, he will be liable to make the payment of penalty if he fails to provide the notice to the AO about the discontinuation. Income received after discontinuation. Income received after the discontinuation. When there is the discontinuation of the business, or there is the discontinuation of the profession, or on the retirement, or on the death of the person who is carrying the profession, any sum in any year after the date of discontinuation is received, then it shall be deemed to be the income of the recipient. That it shall be considered the income of such recipient, and it shall be chargeable to tax in the year in which it is received. Means such income will be chargeable to tax in the hands of recipient in the year in which it is received. In the year in which it is received. Is that for the example there is a business, and the name of the business is ABC Limited. Now such ABC Limited discontinue its business in financial year 2019-20. In 2019-20, the ABC Limited discontinue business or close the business activity. In 2020 and 21, in 2020 and 21, it received an income. It is just like A, B, C, it's A, only A. Mr. A, he had discontinued his business in 2019-20, and in 2020 and 21 he received an income. He received an income of rupees 2,50,000 on the behalf of his business. Now such 2,50,000 rupees will be taxable in the hands of recipient, means in the hands of Mr. A. In the hands of Mr. A in the financial year 2020 and 21, means such income will be considered the income of Mr. A for the financial year 21 and 20 and 21 means such income will be taxable in the year in which it is received, in the year in which it is received. So in the case when there is any discontinue of any business, discontinue of any profession on account of cessation of the profession by or on the retirement or on the death of person who is carrying the business, any of the sum which is received in any year after the discontinuation, then such income shall be deemed to be the income of the recipient and it shall be chargeable to tax accordingly, and the tax shall be charged means the tax shall be charged in the year in which the income is received by such a recipient. If the amount would have been included in the total income if it have been received before the discontinuation. If it is received before the discontinuation, then at the time when we will determine discontinue income means at the time of discontinuation, then it will be included in the income. But if it is received after, then it will be taxable. Then it will be taxable in the year when it will be received. So, on the basis of such discussion, we have discussed some important and the relevant section and the provision of such a important topic. Of such a important topic. In our another class, and in there are another classes are also there in which we have discussed all other provisions which are relating to such a particular topic. Kindly consider all the videos of such topics so that you can properly understand all these special cases and how you will determine the amount of liability in all these special cases. So thank you so much for watching this video. Okay, bye bye and have a nice day.